Random thoughts. This is another random thoughts video, and in this video, I'm going to tell you why I have given up on Africans becoming truly independent. Because looking at how everything plays out, I come to the conclusion that there is no chance of Africans becoming independent, truly independent. It's very difficult. Of course, there is in this channel or this account, I talk a lot about colonial times. In fact, I read mostly documents written during colonial times and some that were written before. And we can say that the time that Africans were truly independent were times before colonial time, before the European powers came and subdivided the land, and they, of course, shared it out, and each power took a part and they colonized those pieces. I think before that happened, that's when Africans were truly independent. But after 1884, when the Berlin Conference happened, I don't think Africans have been independent. And looking at how things play out, I don't think there is a chance that Africans are going to be independent, at least not in the near future. That's likely not to happen. Now, you might be wondering, what are you talking about? We became independent in 1960s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. African countries became independent. They gained, the colonial powers left. Now, a simple look at it, it seems like they left. And then, yeah, the Africans got a chance to have their own people rule over them. But when you start analyzing how everything played out, then you realize they didn't really go. They left, but they left after they had figured out how they were going to continue controlling the now newly independent countries. And they've continued to do that. And the idea of this video came to me. I saw somebody did a video, and she was talking about Idi Amin. And there was a time that I did a video about Idi Amin, who was the president of Uganda, you can say dictator, from 1960s until late 1970s. Now, Idi Amin is one of those African, we can say, leaders or politicians that managed to get a very bad reputation, and their image even to date is so tainted that their name is used to represent evil. And I guess the talk about Idi Amin has become very common in the recent days or weeks, specifically because of what went on in Tanzania. And some people at some point started calling the president of Tanzania, oh, she's Idi Amin Mama, like Idi Amin Dada, she's Idi Amin Mama, that she's so evil, that she's doing things that can only be compared to what Idi Amin did. Now, the people who say that, of course, have taken the mainstream history. That's what they know. They were told Idi Amin was terrible, was horrible, he did terrible things. And I'm not saying Idi Amin was an angel. No, no, that's not what I'm saying. He was a person with his own imperfections, and maybe he got a little bit drunk with power. And almost everybody who gets into such positions, if they are not careful, they can run into that. But what I mean is that the image we have of Idi Amin is very suspicious. If you are careful, if you are someone who looks at things very carefully, you will realize, or you start to notice, that that image is very suspicious. And the video I did, I was talking about how the image of Idi Amin was crafted using the mainstream media, the Western mainstream media, the books, the news channels, that is, and the movies. There were several movies done about him. And all these channels portray him as a really, really bad person. And that is suspicious. That's what should make you very suspicious. When you start to dig a little bit deeper, you realize that this guy most likely wronged very powerful people. He challenged very powerful people. And those people decided, you know what, we are going to mess you up that even your own people will not want to even be associated with you. And they actually succeeded in doing that. And 30 years, 40 years, close to 50 years later after he left, his name is still associated with evil, such that that is the name that people think is the appropriate name to call another leader who they think is doing something really, really terrible. That's how good the PR was. Now, for the average person, we see, and I've said this in another video, we see things being mentioned about specific targets by different people, and we assume it's organic, that, oh, this news channel says this about this person, this one says something similar or the same about this person, this book is written says something similar about this person, then it must be true. What we don't realize is that there is a coordination to these things. There is a campaign that is well managed. And so while you think that these different characters are doing independent things and they're just thinking about this person, and it just happens that it's coincidence that all of them come to the conclusion that this person is this thing. That's what happened. Now, coming back to, I said I watched somebody do a video where she was talking about Idi Amin, and she was, seems like she did another video which I did not watch, and then she was maybe talking about the evil of Idi Amin and maybe associating or maybe saying that the president of Tanzania, Suluhu Hassan, is reaching those levels of being evil or wickedness. And maybe there are people who went to her comment section and tried to educate her that no, actually you should have another look at the Idi Amin story. And maybe she started digging around. I'm not saying that's what happened. This is speculation on my side. Maybe she realized that actually, yeah, there is a lot more about Idi Amin than the mainstream story. And she came back to be like, yeah, I think this is a topic. And to be fair to her, she was like, yeah, this is a topic I need to do some more research, and maybe I was wrong about thinking about Idi Amin in those ways. Now, before I even go further, the story of the caricaturing of Idi Amin by the mainstream media, especially the Western mainstream media, and the books and the movies, is something that the Western world has perfected, or they had perfected way before Idi Amin came along. And of course, at the moment I'm reading the Mad Mullah of Somaliland. Is a story about Muhammad Abdullah Hassan, and they call him the Mad Mullah, meaning insinuating that he's not right upstairs. There's something wrong with him. And that's part of that. The way they did to Muhammad Abdullah Hassan, branding him mad, is the way they branded Idi Amin to be this murderous, evil buffoon who did not understand things. But then he was so good at, doing a lot of evil stuff. It's the same strategy. Now, coming back to why I said that I don't think there is a hope for Africans being independent, is that machine that can brand you to be very evil that scares Africans, especially those that rise up to become leaders. That machine is so well oiled and well arranged such that if you reach a certain level and you threaten interests of the West, they can threaten you, and they can be like, we can do you so bad that if you can stink so bad that even your own people will not want to be close to you. So be very careful. And they can use force, of course, like they did with Muammar Gaddafi, or they can just tarnish you proper. They can tarnish you proper such that your own people will run away from you. Now, yeah, that is scary when you start to think about that, because then you realize there are people we elect or who get elected, which is another, which happens in another, we can say, system that is also makes us to be disadvantaged. And is a system, especially, and I've always said that we as Kenyans, for example, complain about corruption. And I always tell people, until the day we start having a serious conversation about the source of money that is used in campaigns, we should not complain about corruption. If we are not talking about how much is a candidate spending and where is that money coming from and where does that money come from and who is giving that money and for what reason, we should not complain about corruption, because complaining about corruption while not taking care of that very foundational issue will not take us anywhere. And of course, the people who want to control African countries know that. They know that, for example, in Kenya, I've had figures like 20 billion shillings for you to run a campaign, a successful campaign for the office of the president. And I guess it's the same, maybe not the same equal amount of money, but it's a significant, very high amount of money that you need to run to become a governor of a county. Now, if you take 20 billion shillings and you look at the salary of a president and you total it, is less than 300 million, the entire five. years. Now, if it's less than 300 million and this guy is going to spend 20 billion, what does that tell you? This money comes from somewhere. And if that money comes from somewhere, the people who give that money expect something in return. And that's the foundation of corruption, if you ask me. So if we are going to be serious about corruption, we should start asking ourselves, how much does a candidate spend and where does that money come from? If we take care of that, we can then minimize corruption in other ways. But if we don't take care of that, it does not matter what laws and systems and whatever else we put in place. We are just wasting time. We are just pretending that we are fighting corruption. It's not going to work. Now, and that's a loophole that other powers can use, because they know if a candidate needs like 20 billion shillings to run a successful campaign, then of course those powers can support those people to run. And of course, they will support people they are sure of that these people are going to do our bidding. That's scary when you start to think about. Now, that's just one part. Now, what happens when this is another scary part to it? What happens when, for example, I'm going to use the example of Murima Hills. Now, if you've been following news recently, there are these minerals that have been discovered in Kwale County. And they are rare minerals. These rare minerals are very useful in, I hear about electronics and maybe batteries and things like that. And these minerals are attracting attention from the superpowers, that is the United States and China. They are so interested about them because they are very useful and they are very rare. Now, somebody was saying, oh, we are going to prevent them from accessing them, and we are going to give them, whether we like it or we don't like it, they are going to get the minerals. If they really want them and they're that valuable, they are going to get them. And this is how they are going to get them. They are going, of course, to do the usual, try to talk to government, try to go through the official channels to try to get private companies from their countries, get licenses and rights to mine. And if there is a pushback or there is reluctance on the side of the Kenyan government to give them the access, and I'm talking about the Americans, for example, then they are going to resort to other means. And other means includes threatening the government that is in place at that time. And how do they threaten them? Through money. And there is this entire other system called the civil societies. And I know some people can become very, very um, uncomfortable when we start talking about the entire civil society sphere. That's an arm, a very powerful arm. And people, we've been conditioned to think that civil society is good. NGO is good. Like, we never even questioned it. Like, the propaganda has been so powerful that we never question the intent of the people behind NGOs, behind civil societies. To us, they are outrightly, automatically the good guys. We never question it. But here is the danger. The civil society spend money, a lot of money. NGOs spend money, a lot of it. The people who give that amount of money, just like I said, the money about campaigns, those are people with interest. Those are people who want to achieve certain goals. So, coming back to Murima, if the Kenyan government in place at that time, you can say maybe the current or another one, they seem to resist giving the Americans access to the rare minerals, then civil societies are going to be funded. And mainstream media, they will start talking about the terrible things that the government is doing, and then civil societies will join in and bring up all these stories about human rights and freedom and all that. And then there will be these other groups that you don't even know organizing protests. And then during those protests, the government reacts, trying to control stuff or try to control things. In the process, more people are hurt, and then there is even more outcry. Human Rights International starts talking, and The Hague starts saying, "Oh, some people have presented petitions. We need to investigate." Those are very effective threats. Before you know it, those people just be like, "Hey guys," and these things happen behind the scenes. They don't happen in the front. They have to give in and be like, "Yeah, we are going to give you access to the minerals." And if that does not work, you know what the end of it is? The end of it is the boots on the ground. Of course, you're not going to be told that, oh, we are doing that because we want access to the minerals. No, no, no. They will tell you, we are doing that because there is something bad that the government is doing to you. And now we are coming to save you. That's why you should be very suspicious when you hear that an American or a Western government is talking about, oh, we need to go to the ground and save some people. And if you've been watching news, of course, you know the story with Nigeria at the moment. There have been these rumors that the Americans are saying, oh, there are a lot of terrible things happening on the ground, and we are coming to save some group of society or some part of society from another one or from this and that. They don't do those things because they love the people so much. It's always interest. So the reason I say that I think there is no hope for Africans is when I see how, especially arms like the civil societies are becoming very effective. I'm not saying, for example, Suluhu Hassan, she's an angel, but most likely you are hating her without knowing why you are hating her because you've been told to. That's the scary part. The average person comes to hate, for example, and I'm using her as an example. You come to hate her so much, but if you are asked why you hate her, you'll just be told by somebody you don't even know. They told you this is a terrible human being, dislike her, you dislike her. And that's where my worry comes from, that there is no way we can be independent, because if somebody does not do the bidding for the Western powers, our own people can be weaponized to bring those people down. So money can just come in from these groups, and these groups can organize a lot of stuff, protest and all sort of things, and then there are people shot, and then there is chaos, and then there's like revolution, and then another very dangerous narrative is the narrative of people of a certain generation are inherently good, people of a certain generation are inherently bad, or people of a certain generation can be inherently good leaders, people of a certain generation can inherently not be good leaders. Very dangerous talk, very cheap talk, very superficial talk, that if you start analyzing it carefully, you're like, no way. A corrupt person is a corrupt person. Does not matter which generation they come from. An incompetent leader is an incompetent leader. It does not matter which generation they come from. But these narratives are driven so that it is so easy to manage stuff. Because if you are allowed to become complex as human and you start analyzing an individual as an individual, then you know that is not easy to control. But if you are told, oh, this generation, this is how this generation behaves, this generation, this is how this generation behaves, it becomes so easy to mold you to behave in a certain way because you think my generation thinks this way, my generation needs to act this way. Yeah, it becomes very easy. But these are decisions that are made by other people who you don't know. Now, that control comes from elsewhere, and it's out of that control that I'm worried that Africa can never be independent. Maybe the only Africa, the last time it was independent was before colonization, and after that, it's not been independent. And I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel of it being independent. There will always these forces from outside that will have so much power and will control the narratives and the actions and the politics of the land. Those are my random thoughts.